All right, so ClioCon, we're here. We made it all the way from the Chicagoland area. And although you're just a short drive away, it's funny that we're now only seeing each other in Austin.
Right, we have to come to Austin to see each other.
Yeah, sometimes these things happen. So
it works out that way.
So for the people who aren't familiar with your content, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yep, so I'm Chelsea Williams, Chief Financial Architect at Core Solutions Group. We help law firms with all the money things, so we're your money go-tos. How about you, Jay?
Yep, I'm the CEO and founder of Paragon Tech. We help law firms to demystify technology to implement solutions that will help them create efficiency at the end of the day. So, purposeful technologies, that's the name of our game.
Love it, and you're at the right conference for that.
I think so, and I would say you are as well.
Absolutely.
So I know we have a ton of things we want to discuss. Every time we talk, we wind up talking for hours. We're not going to talk for hours today. However, there's a couple things I wanted to touch on. So, what are some of the biggest opportunities you're seeing from your perspective? I know Clio, they just released their new legal trends report for 2024. There was some amazing data in there, things that I'm sure we'll both incorporate into the way that we serve our clients. But from your perspective, what are the biggest opportunities that your clients can take advantage of in 2024 and beyond?
So I think the most profound number that I heard, and there were even reactions in the crowd around it, was that AI has the capability of taking over 73% of billable hours. And to me, as a data person, that's huge. In fact, there was a law firm owner behind me, as soon as he shared that, was like, oh, well, I'm out of a job. And if we look at our businesses as a job, then yeah, you might be out of a job. But if we look at our businesses through the eyes of data and leveraging that data and building our business, I think that's a lot of opportunity. What do you think about AI?
Yeah, I mean, AI has been a prevailing theme, I think, over the last year in general. Most of the webinars we see out there, they're on the topic of AI in some fashion. So the biggest thing for me, I thought, was the fact that 43% of consumers are wanting their attorney to use AI and leverage it to deliver them a better outcome and do it in a more efficient timeline. So that's huge. So the lawyer who's looking at this as I'm out of a job, absolutely. If you don't implement AI or recognize its advantages, recognize that it's really just revealing a chink in the armor of the classical law firm billing model, the almighty hourly, the almighty hourly billing. So, when you look at it from that perspective, I think there's huge opportunity there for firms who want to seize the opportunity to use AI in a purposeful way to solve issues that they're currently experiencing in their firms. So those things might be things like drafting briefs or performing legal research, or even I have a client we're using AI to redefine the way that they draft their discovery resolution letters when there's a dispute between what discovery requests are relevant in a particular matter. And the lawyer is able to just take all of their emails that they've sent between opposing counsel and themselves, input it into the tool, and then have the letter generate all of the discovery items requested. This is a huge time saver. So for this particular firm, they're looking at it as an opportunity of this work was tedious. It was just minutia that they didn't want to do anyway. And frankly, most of the time that they were spending on these kinds of activities, they were writing off because their clients were just pushing back. So, it's going to be really difficult for firms to compete with firms who are using AI if they're trying to do things in the old school way. It's just going to be difficult.
Yeah. And change is hard to embrace for anybody. It's human nature to not like change. But in the world of business, we absolutely have to embrace change. And so it's one more thing that law firm owners need to learn, and that can seem overwhelming, right? You're well versed in AI. How do you think a law firm owner should approach learning it?
Yeah, so I believe in full immersion learning. You can't learn it by reading about it or watching videos on it or talking to colleagues about how they're using it. You have to practice implementing it by yourself. Someone, I can't remember who, I would love to credit them, but I can't remember who said it, but somebody likened it to swimming. You can't learn swimming by reading a book on it. You have to get in the water, right? Now there is the risk that you could drown as well, right? Like we can't deny that reality, but with proper preparation and doing it in a strategic way that's purposeful, you will be able to just take all of the best lessons from it and sidestep all of the negative consequences that potentially could happen. So that's what firms need to do when it comes to AI. Big thing, I tell firms, open up a ChatGPT account at very least. Get familiarized with the tool. Use it to create your grocery list for the week. Or in my case, use it to write bedtime stories for your 9-month-old daughter, right? She definitely understands them. So, use it, and so that way it starts to open up your mind as far as the possibilities that are there. And once you do that, now you're ready for the next step. You're ready to use it within your own legal practice to enhance the way that you're performing law. So, big thing for me, I'm big on when it comes to AI, you have to be purposeful about why you're implementing it. Many firms nowadays, because they see these statistics with 73% of lawyers using AI in some fashion in their practice, they want to keep up with the Joneses and use AI. But that, I would argue, is not an effective way to leverage it. You need to be looking to solve for a particular constraint in your business model. And I know we'll talk about some of the numbers and the metrics around what designates a high-performing firm from a low one, but you have to be purposeful. So I created an acronym, I call it Leverage AI, and it basically helps attorneys to understand the activities or the types of tasks that would be a good fit for AI.
So I have another question for you. I have recently heard that, because people are using AI, and it's pretty easy to use like ChatGPT, and you can put in ChatGPT to, for example, write a blog, and you can give it some information. Now, I heard really recently that Google has kind of caught on to that, onto if it's a pure ChatGPT script. So do you have any advice for the law firm owner who's kind of playing with ChatGPT in that way, in terms of letting ChatGPT write the entire thing, or a process of once you run it through ChatGPT for something like marketing content, to kind of put your own spin on it?
So on Saturday, day one of ClioCon, Damian Reel, who is an attorney and a legal technologist, he gave his keynote, and in this presentation he talked about the idea that ideas are really the core component of value. So when you use ChatGPT, what you're doing is you're taking an idea and you're expressing it, and there's almost an unlimited amount of expressions, the ways that you can communicate that idea, but the initial core idea is where the value is. So his concept was making an outline. Instead of asking ChatGPT to search the entire contents of the internet, confine it to a specific subset of documents or work product that you'd like it to create its expression based on, and then use that in order to generate your ultimate outcome. So that way you're not looking to have ChatGPT create some generic boilerplate version of what you're trying to express. It's actually a manifestation of the idea that you had. So I think in a lot of ways, guiding the AI tools and telling them, giving them guardrails around how you'd like them to function is a very meaningful and purposeful way of implementing the tools. And at the end of the day, it reduces the amount of generic, templated, boilerplate looking content that's out there. There was a study that was performed in 2024, and what they actually found is that ChatGPT is actually getting dumber because of the fact that it's now, when they retrain the model, it's being trained on data that was generated by ChatGPT. So it's like asking it to eat its own regurgitation, and what do you think you're going to get out of that process? It's just a worse end product. So what they've had to do is design systems internally at OpenAI to allow ChatGPT to recognize content that has likely been written by ChatGPT in order to exclude that from the data source that the platform is using to train its algorithm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. So,
and I never thought of that.
Let me ask you this. So I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about financials. I know that's your jam at the end of the day, and a lot of times when I'm calling on you to help and advise with my clients, we have conversations around these numbers. So what are the most important metrics that you tend to find that separate the high-performing firms with firms that are struggling?
I think it's important to start with high-performing firms actually engage with their numbers. So in his opening statement on day one, Jack also spoke to, no, it's not your job to do accounting, because it's what law firm owners hate the most about what they do is the accounting. Accounting is not your job. However, understanding the product of what accounting gives you, that is your job, which is understanding the numbers and the financial statements. And so when we talk about financial literacy, what financial literacy means, in my opinion, for law firms is being able to look at a financial statement and understand the story behind the numbers. Because in addition to KPIs, there are other things that you can recognize on different financial statements. But to start with KPIs, I view KPIs in kind of 4 different chunks. So if we have like an entire business funnel, the first funnel starts with sales and marketing. That's how we generate potential revenue, right? And then so some of the most important KPIs in that sales marketing funnel would be things like people coming to your website, but more importantly, lead source, conversion rate, and average case value. Because with that equation alone, now we're able to quantify revenue and revenue potential. before we ever get to any of the other KPIs.
So do you find that firms that typically tend to have a better handle on their metrics, are there any inherent differences on how they manage their firm or how they meet as a leadership team, or are there some similarities or differences that you find that really separate those firms that have a good handle on their data versus those who don't?
Absolutely. They get out of the guessing game. They're not guessing anymore about how many prospects they have, how many of those prospects are going to convert, and how much their revenue is going to be for the next, say, 12 months. There's a certain level of certainty that comes with being able to collect data effectively, report on it, and look at it and understand it. It creates an anticipation that creates peace of mind and confidence in the future. So absolutely. High-performing firms know months in advance if there's going to be a cash flow shortage. What are you seeing on your side as far as the most important KPIs to drive growth?
So from my end, utilization is huge. So utilization is defined as the percentage of time that lawyers spend on billable or client-facing matters versus their total workday. So if you work an 8-hour day, so based on the latest Clio Legal Trends report, they found that the average utilization rate across law firms in the United States is 37%. That means lawyers are billing on average 2.9 hours out of the day. So if they work an 8-hour day, they're only billing 37% of it. Now, obviously, this is an issue and a problem, and the number has not really fluctuated in the last several years. It's been between 30 and now 37%. So really what it's doing is exposing the fact that attorneys are becoming more efficient and they're not able to capitalize on those efficiency gains. They're not able to bill for that time, right? So the only way really that I can see productively moving forward from this stage that we're in now is for more firms to adopt flat fee or subscription-based or alternative fee arrangements. The hourly billing model is really starting to see its end. I mean, and I don't think it will die completely. I think it will always exist, in perpetuity with a small subset of firms. But I do believe within the next 12 to 24 months, firms will really start having serious talks internally with their stakeholders about whether a flat fee or subscription-based model makes sense for their firm. Now, it's really important in order to transition those models, you have to know the metrics, you have to know the data that drives whether you're actually profitable in taking on those matters. So utilization is huge in that particular case. Now, realization is also another big one. Firms need to know how much time are they actually billing to their firms versus writing off at the end of the day. So, when we look at the hourly billing model, which 53% of all law firms in the United States are still billing hourly, we know that the average utilization rate is around 76%. And that means firms are typically writing off almost 30% of their time because either A, they don't believe the time was justified that it's spent, again, exposing more of the chinks in the armor, or B, clients are pushing back once they send the bills. And clients are saying, hey, I'm not going to pay those kind of fees, you need to lower the bill. And attorneys typically, since they are always in fear of having an ethical complaint, they almost always cave in and acquiesce and lower their prices, right, and write off time. So that's another metric that's a huge leading indicator that shows how a firm is performing. The last one I think is super important is the collection rate. So how quickly are you actually able to bill clients and collect on those bills? The average collection rate in the US is 86%. So we're leaving a ton of money on the table. These are leading to cash flow issues, and ultimately they prevent the firm from investing in marketing initiatives or anything, any strategic initiative that requires capital. The firm is unable to do that because it has its money locked up in accounts receivable. So those are the big metrics at the end of the day that I think are very important. Oftentimes we're asked by firms, how do we actually get an accurate gauge of what these metrics are? And my thing is that you always need some form of automated data capture. If you're relying on manual methods, you will not be able to perform those on a long-term basis. You need systems and processes and tools, whether it be extracting this data from your practice management system, your accounting platform, your CRM, ideally all three of those so you can get a really granular view. So a lot of the time that we spend working with our clients is focused on how do we accurately capture these metrics and set up automated ways so that the firm can report on these on a regular cadence. So I'm curious, when we're talking about data and metrics, so I'm curious, when we're talking about the topic of data and metrics and cadences, how often do you typically recommend that firms review with their leadership team these metrics and what ultimately should be the ideal outcome out of these meetings?
So for the KPIs that you mentioned, which is utilization, realization, and collection, those are weekly needle movers because we are working weekly, billing time weekly, invoicing maybe weekly, right? No less than monthly. And I think that some of the cadence changes depending on where your bottleneck is, right? So if there's an area of your firm that you know you need to focus on, especially when we're really dialing in that data capture, right? If it's something that we know we need to improve on, we know we need to get better at, hold people accountable, then it becomes a more often thing. It's something that we do more often until maybe we back it up. Because we've got clients sometimes that are doing weekly cadence of those.
Now, do you ever find there's a sweet spot? How do firms know how often they should meet and what cadence works best for their firm? Is there a method or a framework or some type of